Hi ho, it's off to work we go. I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head for the rest of the day. Snow White. So in Disney's crusade to remake all their animated classics in live action, they have finally come to their very first animated movie. For all two of you who didn't know, not only is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs their first animated movie, but it is the first animated feature film of all time. So Disney's live action remake is kind of a big deal. Of course, this is gonna be a fresh new take. Since the original came out in 1937, that's 2 years before The Wizard of Oz. It's old, and it shows its age. According to Disney anyway, that original film wouldn't exactly fly with today's standards. So there's quite a bit of new stuff in this remake, but to lay down the premise, Snow White is a maid who works for the evil queen in her castle. The queen is obsessed with her own beauty, but the magic mirror tells her that Snow White is fairer than her, so she sends Snow White away, and she comes across 7 dwarves in their cottage, and also there's a guy named Jonathan who's a bandit who stumbles into the story as well. And so here we go, fairest of them all, hi-ho, and Snow White. Now, of course, in case you've been living under a rock, there's been a lot of chatter and talk about this movie. None of it was really good, starting from when Rachel Zegler was talking trash about the original movie, to Peter Dinklage's outrage about the dwarf situation. Plus, the trailers didn't make this movie much more appealing, so it seems like poor Snow White is dead on arrival. Gotta say, and this is gonna sound shocking, but it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. It's not good. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't recommend seeing this movie at full price at all. And I will say that if you have a little kid, then that little kid will enjoy this movie because that's who this movie is aiming towards. For the adults out there, I make this video for you. How are you gonna fare with this movie? Let's talk about Rachel Zegler as Snow White. Because at this point, we all know that she has talent. I know that she's gotten a lot of crap over this movie, but I'm not a hater. She's lost some points from me for sure, because I used to be a huge fan of hers back in West Side Story. And I even loved her in Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but as Snow White, she's okay. I mean, she's still the same hopeful young soul that she was in the animation. Sometimes she comes across as a little naive, like too optimistic, but that is who Snow White is. That's how she's supposed to be. That's how she's always been. When I say she's the best character in this movie, that is a plus. Because then there's Gal Gadot as the evil queen, and I do apologize that it took me this long to realize how bad of an actress she really is. Again, I'm not a hater, but yeah, she's not good in this movie. I'd say she was a miscast, honestly. I mean, I've seen her act pretty well in other movies. Even like Wonder Woman 1984, for example. Movie wasn't great, but she was good in it. In this movie, no. She overacts a lot, and I wouldn't even say it's her fault. I mean, it partially is, but it is also the direction, not gonna lie. I mean, there's tons of people clowning on her on social media. I've seen this a lot, like clips of her worst delivered lines. You can find this. And in this movie, we learn another thing about her, and that is that she can't sing. I'll get to that when I touch on the music. The CG dwarves, they actually did not look as bad as I thought they would from the trailers. The trailers made them look terrible, but in the movie, they don't look, I mean, they still look bad, I'll be honest, but their skin actually does look real. They have like a sort of ugly charm to them, if I could say it like that. And the way they behaved was all cartoonish. It was cute. Like, yeah, that's how they're supposed to be. When they're dancing around and singing, you can't help but be like, okay, at least Babe and I, we fell into it. But then there's this guy, Jonathan, oh my god. Played by, what's his name, Andrew Burnap. First of all, first thing that Babe and I noticed about him was his voice. The whole time it sounded like he was fighting back an accent, but he is an American actor. He's from Rhode Island, so maybe he was fighting back a Rhode Island accent. I don't know. He just sounded weird, and then he started singing. He can't sing either, dude. Oh my god, the auto-tune was abysmal. It's like Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast. It was that bad. And his character was also like completely forced. There was a part of me that thought he didn't have to be in the movie at all. He was there to be a love interest for Snow White because Snow White comes with a love interest because that's how it's always been. But in Disney modernizing the story of Snow White, they could have done without a love interest. That's how I see it anyway. But then I guess that would piss off fans of the original, all 3 that are left. So love interest stays in. Now, funny thing about this movie is, like I said, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. There were scenes where Babe and I both looked at each other. We were like, that was actually really fun and really enjoyable. Could it be so? Could this movie be actually, dare I say, good? Like the hi-ho scene, for example, they elevated that song from the original, and we both thought it was awesome. New lyrics were added to the song. In fact, new lyrics were added to most of the original songs, and Babe and I found ourselves enjoying them. And there's even one scene towards the end, I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's between the Queen and Snow White. Something happens where we both looked at each other, we were like, that was awesome. It's like one of the best scenes in the movie. This might actually be, like, worth watching. But 'twas not to be. Cause then there are some other scenes where we looked at each other and we were like, yeah, this is just really bad. Like the Queen, she has a song and it's horrible. Like I said, Gal Gadot can't sing, but the lyrics were corny, and I get it, this is a movie aimed at kids, so they can be a little cheesy, so I'll give it that, but for us adults, we're just gonna have to drudge through it. The Queen song, and then Jonathan has a song later on, which is even worse. Not only with the auto-tune, but it's so basic Broadway-style musical theater, and it's because these new songs were written by the team of Pasek and Paul. They wrote the songs for Dear Evan Hansen. Now, I'm not dissing Dear Evan Hansen. I enjoy that show, and I enjoy its music. Enough, anyway. There are a lot of musical shows that I prefer over it, but point is, you can hear the Dear Evan Hansen isms in the songs in this movie. Like the song that Jonathan shares with Snow White, actually they share a couple of songs, but the one I'm talking about, you would swear it was like ripped from the Dear Evan Hansen cutting room floor. In fact, most of this movie feels like a standard Disney Broadway show. It has like the same beats and cadences as one. And it's funny, like at another point during another song, we were like, this movie is trying so hard to be Tangled right now because this song is At Last I See the Light. Like straight up. Which is ironic because Disney is in fact working on a live action Tangled. So it's almost as if it took all the scrapped songs from this upcoming live action Tangled remake and just said, yeah, you can use them for Snow White. And that's why this movie's story is so different. Tinfoil hat moment, I guess. Actually, that was Babe's theory, but it's a good one. The visual effects overall in this movie are actually decent. I mean, the CG animals that I saw all over the trailer, for the longest time I hated how they look, because like, why not just use real animals? But seeing the movie, I do understand. I mean, this is based off a cartoon, and the CG animals, they did have their charm to them, I'm not gonna lie. And then there are some things in this movie that happen that just straight up don't make sense. Like, why does this one single random snowflake just fall out of the sky for no reason? I do get that, yeah, this is a fairy tale, but that's why they were all animated in the first place. Because you can get away with stuff like that in animation. Not so much in live action. This is like common knowledge. I guess the biggest problem this movie has is that it doesn't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be like a sweet cartoony movie? Or does it want to be more edgy? Because there are some pretty raw, edgy scenes in there. Mostly with the evil queen, funnily enough, because Gal Gadot can't act in this movie. So it's really a lose-lose situation. Or lose-lose-lose. It's a triple lose. So the movie kind of stumbles over itself. And we end up with a movie that can't decide whether it's good or bad. Which leaves me kind of neutral on it. Yeah, in the end, Snow White, it was okay. Not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, which, hey, that's a pretty big W. Some scenes were really good, and they are worth seeing on the big screen for that reason. And then some scenes, they just are not worth it. Rachel Zegler was pretty good. Everyone else, not so much. The music is good sometimes it's not so much. See what I mean? It's back and forth. It's like it's playing tug of war with itself. The visual effects, they're not great, they're not bad, they just are. And the story is actually pretty good, for the most part. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that for Snow White, I will say, wait until this movie's at a matinee price, then go see it. And that is, of course, for the adults out there. If you have little kids, then I'll bump it up to say go see it while it's in theaters, because they will enjoy it. So, Snow White, have you seen it yet? Probably not, but if you have, what did you think about it? I mean, let's be honest, we all know this movie's gonna flop. Babe and I were like 2 of 7 people in the theater watching this. So if you haven't seen this, then I will ask, what is your least favorite Disney live-action remake that you have seen? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!